Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a topic that's a little close to home, maybe even underneath you right now, actually. We're talking about sitting, or, sitting too much.
Yeah, the dangers of excessive sitting.
Exactly. And to guide us through this, we're cracking open Get Up.
By Dr. James Levine.
Right. He's a researcher at the Mayo Clinic, and he dedicated his whole career to understanding this stuff. And get this, the book throws out this pretty wild stat right off the bat. Every hour you spend sitting could be shaving 2 hours off your life expectancy.
Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches. Dr. Levine's not just saying sitting too much is bad for you. He's arguing it's even riskier than smoking.
Okay, whoa. That's a bold statement. So how is he backing that up?
Years of research. And a big part of that is this concept he calls NEAT, N-E-A-T, which stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Okay, break that down for me. What is that?
Basically, it's all the calories we burn doing everyday things. Not like formal exercise, but just moving around in general.
So, like, what kind of things are we talking about?
Think about it. Fidgeting during a meeting, pacing while you're on the phone, even just chewing gum, all those little movements add up.
Interesting. So even small movements can make a difference.
Absolutely. Levine's research showed that these seemingly insignificant actions, they all factor into NEAT.
So how did he figure that out?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even track something like fidgeting?
Well, this is kind of a funny visual, but he outfitted people with these special garments. He called them, get this, magic underwear. They had sensors woven in to track people's movements and calorie burn throughout the day.
Magic underwear. That's amazing.
It sounds funny, but it got him some serious data. One thing he found is that folks who naturally move more, he said they have a high NEAT switch. They were way better at burning off extra calories, even if they overate.
Okay, hold on. A neat switch.
Yeah, it's like a built-in system. When they eat more, they subconsciously move around more too, like a balancing act.
Interesting. So it's almost like their bodies naturally compensate.
Exactly, but not everyone has that switch. Some people are just less inclined to move around, and those are the folks who are more likely to gain weight if they aren't mindful.
It's like some of us are wired to be more active, and some of us, well, not so much.
Exactly, and understanding those predispositions is huge for breaking free from what Levine calls the chair sentence.
Okay, we got to talk more about that. But first, I'm curious, how did Dr. Levine even get into studying all this?
Yeah?
What got a Mayo Clinic researcher interested in sitting?
Get this. Snails.
Snails.
Snails. As a kid, he was obsessed with them, even won a science prize when he was like 13 for tracking their movements.
Wow, talk about an early start.
Right. So that fascination with how things move, it never really left him. Eventually, he connected that passion to human movement and health.
And that's what led to his research on sitting.
Exactly. It's a bit of an unconventional path, right? From snail trails to the human chair. But it led him to some groundbreaking, if controversial, discoveries.
Okay, so we've got this neat switch, magic underwear, and snail-obsessed scientists. What else is going on in our brains when we're spending hours glued to our chairs?
So Levine's team, they dug deep into this. They actually pinpointed specific brain chemicals that affect how much we sit versus how much we move.
Okay, so there's actually a biological component to this.
That's what the research suggests. They even did these experiments with rats, injecting them with like move it chemicals.
chemical.
Yeah, and the rats went into overdrive, just couldn't stop moving.
Wow, that's wild. So you're saying our brains might be hardwired to make us either sitters or movers.
It's looking more and more likely, and that's a big piece of the puzzle if we're going to break free from this chair sentence.
Okay, that's both fascinating and a little unnerving. If our brains are practically wired to keep us glued to our chairs, is it even possible to break free?
Now, don't go throwing in the towel just yet. Here's the thing. Even if you are predisposed to being a sitter, it doesn't have to be a life sentence. It's not like you're stuck that way forever.
So there's hope.
Absolutely. Think about it this way. Athletes, they train their bodies to perform at their peak, right? Well, we can do the same thing with our brains. Train them to see movement not as a chore, but as something natural and, dare I say, enjoyable.
Okay, that's a much better way to look at it.
Yeah.
But before we get to the how-to, I'm curious about the historical side of things. Has this chair sentence always been a part of the human experience? Were our ancestors just as glued to their chairs as we are?
That's where things get really interesting. Dr. Levine, he digs into this whole history of sitting in the book, and it turns out our modern love affair with chairs, it's a relatively new development.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Before the Industrial Revolution, people were way more active. Just by necessity, they had to move to get things done.
So no comfy office chairs back then, huh?
Not quite, but seriously, think about it. Farmers, craftspeople, their lifestyles just naturally involved more movement. It's a stark contrast to how we live today.
So the Industrial Revolution, that was the turning point.
Exactly. Factories, office jobs, they all came with a new perk. More time spent sitting in the same position hour after hour.
And then, of course, came the granddaddy of all sitting devices, the automobile,
Yeah,
which it's ironic, right?
totally. We think of cars as the ultimate symbol of freedom, but they've kind of backfired in a way, haven't they?
Totally. How much time do we collectively spend stuck in traffic, just sitting there?
It's mind-boggling. And Dr. Levine, he actually did this study in Jamaica where he compared the activity levels of city dwellers to folks in rural areas.
And what did he find?
Get this, the city dwellers, the ones who relied more on cars, they were sitting for twice as long as the rural folks. And you can guess what that meant for their health.
Not good, I'm guessing.
Not good at all. It was a clear correlation, more sitting, poorer health.
It really makes you realize something as simple as sitting, it can have such a massive ripple effect.
Absolutely, and it goes beyond just our individual health, too. Levine argues that this whole chair-bound lifestyle, it's got bigger consequences for society as a whole. Like, think about our connection to nature.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Being stuck inside all day, glued to our chairs, it's not exactly conducive to spending time outdoors.
Exactly. We're disrupting those natural rhythms, and our bodies weren't designed for that. And then there's technology, which is a whole other can of worms.
Oh yeah. Technology, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? For all the good it brings, it's also made it easier than ever to live a sedentary life.
100%. I mean, we can do almost everything from our phones and computers these days: order groceries, attend meetings, even work out.
It's almost as if we're designing a world where sitting is the default mode of existence. And that's a pretty scary thought, if you ask me. Does Levine offer any glimpses into what this future might look like if we don't change our ways?
He does. He paints this really unsettling but thought-provoking picture of a future dominated by what he calls life stage chairs.
Life stage chairs. Okay, that sounds a little dystopian.
Right. Imagine going through every stage of life, from infancy to old age, basically confined to a chair that's been specifically engineered for that phase.
Okay, that's both fascinating and utterly terrifying. It's like a Black Mirror episode waiting to happen.
Right. We need to rethink our relationship with sitting before it's too late.
So how do we break free from this chair sentence before it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy?
That's the million-dollar question. The good news is, Dr. Levine, he doesn't just leave us hanging with this dire warning. He offers some really practical solutions in the book.
Okay, good, because I was starting to get a little concerned there. So where do we begin?
He highlights some incredible real-world examples of individuals, companies, even entire schools that are finding creative and inspiring ways to combat excessive sitting and incorporate more movement into their daily lives.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Real-world solutions. I'm all ears. Tell me everything.
So one of the most compelling examples is this company, Salo. They're like the gold standard for incorporating movement into the workplace.
Okay, Salo. Tell me more. What did they do?
They totally revamped their whole office space. Like, imagine treadmill desks, walking paths, strategically placed staircases. They really went all out.
Wow, sounds like they threw out the traditional office design rule book and said, let's get moving.
Exactly. They wanted to make movement an integral part of their company culture, not just an afterthought.
I love that. So did they see actual results from this radical approach? Did it actually make a difference in their employees' lives?
Oh, absolutely. Productivity shot up, employee morale went through the roof, and of course, their overall health improved significantly.
That's fantastic. It's proof that investing in a movement-friendly workplace can be good for business and well-being. But what about beyond the office? I mean, not everyone works in a traditional office setting these days.
You're absolutely right, and that's where this other example comes in, Dr. Levine. He spearheaded this amazing project with the school, called it the Neat Active School of the Future.
Okay, a school designed around movement. Now that's intriguing. How does that work?
Well, what's really cool about this school is that it was actually designed with input from the students themselves. They got to share their ideas for incorporating movement into their learning environment.
That's amazing. Giving the kids a voice in shaping their own educational experience.
Yeah.
I love that. So what did they come up with?
Oh, they had all sorts of creative ideas. Things like standing desks, balance balls instead of chairs, classrooms with dedicated spaces for stretching, and light activity breaks.
So simple, Yet so brilliant. And what kind of impact did all this have on the students?
The results were incredible. Teachers observed a noticeable improvement in focus. Their academic performance actually went up, and there was just this overall boost in their well-being.
It's amazing how something as simple as incorporating more movement can have such a positive ripple effect. But let's be honest, it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and let those good intentions fall by the wayside. What advice does Dr. Levine offer for actually sticking with it, for making movement a sustainable part of our lives?
Well, he offers a really practical framework in the book. He outlines 5 key strategies, he calls them weapons, for combating this chair-bound lifestyle we've been talking about.
Weapons, I love it. It's like we're gearing up for a full-on assault on sedentary living.
Exactly. So the first weapon is all about self-awareness. He calls it cue and stimulus control. It's about noticing those triggers in our day that lead to prolonged sitting.
Okay, like what kind of triggers?
Well, think about it. Do you automatically plop down on the couch as soon as you get home from work? Do you find yourself glued to your desk for hours on end, even when you don't necessarily have to be? Those are cues.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of both of those. It's like my brain goes on autopilot and my body just follows suit.
Right. We all have those autopilot moments. So this first strategy is about recognizing those patterns and then consciously choosing a different course of action.
Okay, so interrupt that automatic response. I like it. What's the next weapon in our arsenal?
This one's all about community. He calls it social support. It's the idea that having a support network, people who are cheering us on, can make a huge difference.
Oh, I'm a huge believer in the power of community. There's something so motivating about knowing you're not in it alone.
Exactly. So find a walking buddy, join a fitness class, even just ask a friend or family member to be your accountability partner. Having that shared commitment can be incredibly powerful.
Okay, I'm adding find a movement buddy to my to-do list right now. What else has Dr. Levine got for us?
The next strategy is all about data. He calls it self-monitoring, and it's simply about tracking your movement so you can see your progress.
I'm all about tracking progress. It's so motivating. Are we talking fancy fitness trackers here?
It can be as simple or as high-tech as you like. There are tons of apps and devices out there, but even just jotting down your activity in a notebook each day can be super effective.
Whatever works. The point is, data can be a powerful motivator. Okay, we've got cue and stimulus control, social support, self-monitoring. What's next?
All right, this one's a biggie: reward systems. It's all about celebrating those small wins along the way.
Oh, I'm all about celebrating wins, big or small. It's easy to get so focused on the end goal that we forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
Precisely. So build in those rewards. Maybe it's buying yourself that book you've been wanting, treating yourself to a massage, enjoying a delicious meal.
Whatever feels celebratory.
What?
Okay, last but not least, what's the final weapon in our fight against sitting?
This one is all about mindset. He calls it cognitive restructuring. It's about challenging those negative thoughts and self-talk that can sabotage our best intentions.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
That inner critic can be brutal.
Right. We all have that voice. But with practice, we can learn to recognize those negative thought patterns and replace them with more positive and empowering ones.
It's like giving ourselves a pep talk throughout the day. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here today, from the science of NEAT and the history of sitting to those inspiring real-world examples and Dr. Levine's 5 powerful strategies for incorporating more movement into our lives. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Just this. It's not about striving for some unrealistic ideal of constant motion. It's about finding that sustainable balance that works for you.
So well said. It's about listening to our bodies, honoring our individual needs, and finding joy in movement. This has been such an enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the hidden dangers of sitting and the power of movement.
It's been my pleasure. Remember, even small changes can make a world of difference. So get up, get moving, and enjoy the ride.
And on that note, we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic that's sure to get you thinking and maybe even moving in new and exciting ways.